Oklahoma Board denies clemency for death row inmate Wendell Grissom. In what could soon become one of the year's most high-profile executions, the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board has denied clemency for Wendell Grissom, paving the way for his scheduled execution in March. This critical decision shines a spotlight on the ethical questions surrounding capital punishment, justice, and mercy, reigniting debates among legal experts, advocates, and the public alike. Wendell Grissom was sentenced to death for the brutal killing of 24-year-old Amber Roberts during a home invasion robbery in 2005. What began as an act of theft escalated into a tragic loss of life, leaving behind grieving loved ones and a scarred community. Now, nearly 2 decades later, the Pardon and Parole Board has effectively sealed Grissom's fate, voting for, 1 against granting clemency. During the clemency hearing, the prosecution emphasized the heinous nature of Grissom's crime and the enduring suffering of Amber's family. Their arguments strengthened the case for justice as accountability, particularly for such a grievous crime. However, this ruling has become a flashpoint for ongoing discussions about the moral and legal complexities of the death penalty. Grissom, now 57, declined to address the Pardon and Parole Board himself, opting instead to let his legal representatives plead his case. The silence of the accused raised questions about his motivations or possible resignation to the outcome, undermining the defense's ability to humanize him before the board. With his execution set for March, Grissom is poised to become the first person executed in Oklahoma this year, continuing a state legacy steeped in capital punishment history. For those familiar with Oklahoma's justice system, this case is not surprising. The state has long been one of the most active in carrying out death sentences. Its commitment to capital punishment is rivaled by few other states, often drawing criticism from human rights groups and watchdog organizations alike. Oklahoma has faced backlash for its handling of executions in recent years, including botched lethal injection procedures that reignited public outcry about the humanity, or lack thereof, in the process. Cases like Grissom's, however, continue unabated, showcasing the state's resolve in carrying out severe penalties for its most violent crimes. Despite operational controversies, many in Oklahoma support capital punishment, seeing it as a necessary tool for justice. High-profile crimes like Amber Roberts' murder strengthen this position, offering retribution as a solace for victims' families and communities. The clemency hearing provided a pivotal moment for Wendell Grissom and his legal team to argue for mercy. Guided by precedent and legal necessity, the board convened to deliberate whether any mitigating factors warranted a reconsideration of his death sentence. Defense attorneys framed clemency as a means of demonstrating mercy and humanity, even in the face of unspeakable tragedy. They may have pointed to the rehabilitation Grissom might have undergone or questioned whether his death would ease the pain of Amber Roberts' family. Yet beyond their appeals, one glaring absence stood out: Grissom himself. In declining to address the board via video link, Grissom forfeited a rare and significant opportunity to present his side. Though there could have been tactical or emotional reasons for his silence, this choice likely diminished the chances of convincing the board to grant clemency. The final vote, 4-1 against clemency, sent a clear signal that the board saw no compelling justification to step in. For them, justice required following through with the sentence determined nearly 2 decades ago. At the heart of this case is Amber Roberts, the 24-year-old victim whose life was tragically cut short. For her family and loved ones, the events of 2005 remain as raw and painful today as they were then. Amber is remembered as a kind-hearted woman with a life full of promise, stolen in an act of brutality. Her family has waited years for a sense of closure. Supporters of the execution have argued that carrying out Grissom's sentence is not only justice served, but also a form of resolution for her grieving family. Justice, in their view, is about ensuring perpetrators of such heinous acts face the ultimate penalty for their actions. Critics, however, question whether the execution will indeed offer the finality Amber's family hopes for. Scholars and advocates against the death penalty contend that closure is an elusive concept, one not guaranteed by taking another life, even that of a criminal. This case is not just about Wendell Grissom and Amber Roberts. It taps into larger societal debates about the ethics and role of the death penalty in modern justice systems. In the United States and beyond, capital punishment remains a controversial issue, polarizing communities and complicating notions of justice. Proponents say the death penalty provides a deterrence factor while delivering strong consequences for the most violent crimes. For victims' families, it represents an acknowledgement of the enormity of their loss. These arguments resonate deeply in Oklahoma, a place that has consistently supported capital punishment. On the other hand, vocal critics argue that the death penalty is morally indefensible, citing troubling data on wrongful convictions, racial bias, and procedural inequities. For them, even one innocent life lost to the justice system invalidates the penalty's existence. Questions surrounding the irreversibility of execution continue to dominate conversations about its effectiveness and morality. Wendell Grissom's case now sits at the center of these debates, forcing both Oklahomans and people nationwide to grapple with the complexities of mercy, justice, and human life. Clemency is often described as a fail-safe in capital punishment cases, a chance for institutional mercy in a system built on retribution. Yet, history shows that clemency is rarely granted in cases involving violent crimes like murder. Grissom's case underscores that reality, with Oklahoma's board making the decision to uphold his sentence rather than show leniency. Some observers argue that clemency could have represented an acknowledgement of his humanity without condoning the crime. Others counter that mercy in such cases would undermine the justice system's integrity, particularly when a life has been lost so senselessly. This tension reveals the difficulty of striking a balance between justice and forgiveness. Cases like these force us to ask hard questions about what clemency should represent and whether it can ever truly fit within the framework of capital punishment. Grissom's decision not to address the board during the clemency hearing has further complicated public perception of his case. For some, this silence signaled a lack of remorse or accountability. For others, it may have reflected a man worn down by years of incarceration and legal battles, resigned to an outcome he felt powerless to change. Had Grissom spoken, would it have changed the outcome? The answer is unknowable. However, the absence of his voice left his attorneys with an even heavier burden to convince the board. Their arguments, though impassioned, ultimately did not sway the decision. Grissom has spent nearly 2 decades on death row, living the stark realities of a punishment designed to isolate and dehumanize. Inmates on death row often face psychological torment from the uncertainty of their fate, cycles of appeals, and the grinding conditions of life in a maximum security prison. To advocates seeking reform, Grissom's time on death row offers its own punishment, raising questions about whether the additional toll of execution is necessary. For the state of Oklahoma, however, the execution remains a key element of justice, maintaining the decisive finality of the death penalty. Wendell Grissom's case stands as a microcosm of the debates surrounding capital punishment, a difficult but necessary conversation in the pursuit of justice. The denial of clemency, the upcoming execution, and the decades-long suffering of Amber Roberts' family all contribute to a deeply complex narrative. As we move closer to the scheduled execution date in March, this case forces us to reflect on our values and the kind of justice system we want to uphold. Is the death penalty a necessary component of accountability, or does it represent an irredeemable flaw in our concept of justice? Should mercy have a place in crimes of extraordinary cruelty, or is clemency a betrayal of the victims? True crime audiences, advocates, and society must wrestle with these questions, using cases like Grissom's as a lens through which to navigate the broader implications of the justice system. Ultimately, the discussions that emerge will shape the way we think about punishment, humanity, and the pursuit of true justice.